All right, Ty, you got to describe yourself to me in 3 words, but they all have to start with the letter D.
What? Um, Woof. You know what's funny is like my first word is delusional, but I don't consider myself a
That's a good
delusional
one.
person.
All right,
um,
make your next one a little
uh,
more obvious.
well, I mean, driven maybe.
Nice.
I could go driven. Dreamy.
There you
I
go.
am pretty dreamy
So you're
sometimes. Yeah,
delusional,
when
driven, and dreamy. That's pretty good.
I
That's like
yeah,
that's a
I
good characteristics. Delusional
do you
me.
have what's your D characteristics?
Oh God. Well, I said dreamy earlier. Um, maybe dedicated,
Ooh,
dapper.
wow. Now that is an elite word.
Um, like dilly dallyer. I'm a little bit of a dilly dallyer. A little procrastination, dilly dally. I think that's
Dedicated,
dedicated,
dapper,
dapper, and a
dilly
dilly
dally.
dallyer. All right.
Oh, happy Sunday. Okay, well, hello and welcome everybody. We are back with another incredible episode of the Speak Your Mind podcast powered by TorchPro. I want to give a quick little big shout out. This episode won't release for a little bit, but my brother got engaged last night, which is just crazy.
Good.
Yeah, snap, snap, snap. I honestly, I was at my buddy's place and I was like, I don't even know how to like feel, because like obviously, I mean, he hasn't asked me yet. I mean, I hope I get the question of, can you be my best man? I'm really hoping for it. My mom thinks it's going to happen. My dad thinks it didn't happen last night, but I mean, obviously, more emotions were taking place than that. But yeah, crazy. Congratulations to Grades and Andy. It's just mind blowing. It's just wild. This is like now it's like wedding season. Like I'm getting to the age
You're getting old.
where it's like, okay, I've just gotten a group chat with one of my best friends about his bachelor party. And then now my brother's getting engaged. And I just think, it's time. Like
Exciting
not for
times.
me, but,
Weddings are
it's
fun.
time for wedding season. And I absolutely love weddings. Weddings are full of connection. And I think connection is a huge reason as to why we brought on our next guest. Rob Pintwala is the founder and owner of First Session. Now, First Session, I would entertain, or I would ask, or encourage. See, e-words. We should do e-words next time. I would encourage all of our listeners to please check out First Session. It's an online platform that helps with the difficult journey of finding a therapist that you can really connect with. I've had many conversations over these past couple of years with friends that are always, a little bit timid, a little bit worried about, finding that initial connection with a therapist because it's not easy. But what Rob's done is to be able to, help ease that burden and help create a user-friendly platform that, can instantly connect you to somebody that you can hopefully create a lasting relationship with your therapist or psychologist. So yeah, I mean, we had a great conversation. Rob and Riles grew up a little bit together, so it was neat to kind of for me be on the outside of their long, I guess, relationship. But I really enjoyed this one. I think Rob's a great human being, and what he's doing is very much needed, especially post COVID. So
Yeah, yeah. You said it great. I mean, I got to sort of grow up a bit with him. He played hockey. We played a bit of hockey together through minor hockey, and yeah, he's just doing such a great thing with First Session and makes that therapy, the initial steps of going to see a therapist, way less intimidating. And that's one of the most important things, I think, is just connecting with the person you're talking to and feeling like you're in it together and you're taking steps forward. So he's doing a great thing. He's a really smart guy, starting something from the ground up. It's not easy, and he's doing a great job of it and doing it for a good cause. So yeah, we had a good talk with this one, and we hope you enjoy.
Okay, Rob, we were chatting a little bit before, but a big move in your life lately. Going from Ontario to now BC. You're a little bit closer to me, actually, which is kind of nice. But how was summer? Was probably hectic. You got a little one as well. So how's things been?
Yeah, things are great. Things are good. I've not my first time out west here. So I used to live in Vancouver for 5 years. So I've been flip flopping coasts for the last 10 years, but I think I'm here for a while. So now I'm in Victoria, BC, and it's pretty great being close to the ocean. And we got some snow already in November, but that's super rare for here. So it's pretty moderate climate and great place to raise a family. So got a young one who's almost a year, and my wife's got some family and friends out here, which is awesome. So it's a big change, and I've had to remind
So
myself
does that
to
make you a Canucks fan?
no.
Are you a Leafs fan, or what are you?
I'm a Leafs fan by birth. Yeah, no choice in the matter. Yeah,
Well, I
even
think
though
like this year, Leafs fan you might be a little better off this year. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to knock on the Canucks, but just based off the start, they didn't have the best start. So we'll
yeah,
see what happens.
I get to witness all their fans' agony out here, and I'm further away from the Leafs fans' agony, but I'm still part of it.
All right. So obviously, a big reason we wanted to bring you on today was talk about your story, and a big reason was first session. What you've been able to do. I was just cruising through your website again there, and I mean, you highlighted right on top, and it's 5,000 connections made with therapists, and I think that's just there's so much in that is incredible to be able to help that many connections flourish in a very challenging space. But let's go back a little bit. Like when did this idea blossom in your mind? Like when did this kind of be like, we don't have this in our world, we need this in our world? Was it a personal story where you couldn't personally find your own therapist, or was it a case of, I know that people have this need and I would like to help them meet it because it is a very uncomfortable space for a lot of people?
Yeah, thank you. And good question. I think it's the merging of like three components of my life coming together. So the first one being that I've always wanted to be doing something more entrepreneurial. So I started my career in like the tech world, working for different startups, software companies, not as an owner, but just as an employee. But I was at my like previous job to this, when my partner, girlfriend at the time, but now wife, was going through a difficult time, in particular because her father was terminally ill with stage 4 cancer. And at the time we lived in Toronto, and I've learned that you can't force anyone to go to therapy, of course, but I was sort of gently encouraging Shannon to go to a counselor or a therapist if she wanted. And after several months, she on her own decided to go for it. And more so, just like the grief was on the horizon, and it was happening pretty quickly with her father. So she tried to go to a therapist, and her criteria for finding a therapist was, this was 2018, I think, by the way. So online therapy wasn't as popular. So she wanted to go somewhere as close as physically possible because she thought that the outcome might be so stressful that she didn't want to be far away from home, like after a session, for example. So she tried like the closest clinic to where we lived, which was downtown, and just had a poor experience. Like talked to a junior clinic staff, and they were just like, didn't really hear her out. Just like, we're like, sure, we can help you. And it was almost, they were almost like salesy with her, excuse me. And so she, kind of went through the motions there. And then they just paired her with a therapist who was like just not anyone that she was resonating with. Like it was just a bad fit. So then she basically just ended it. Like it was like one session, or like maybe not even one session, and she just gave up. Not only did she end it, but she just gave up on therapy. And she's like, this isn't for me. And it was so hard for her to like take that step and try to find the right help, because she was thinking about it for months, and like finally built up the courage, and most likely opened up her story a little bit to the intake person and then to the actual therapist. And it's exhausting telling your story more than once, or even once. So yeah, that was the spark that lit this idea. And it was mostly that turned into some conversations with friends about shared experiences, shared disappointments in this, system of trying to find a therapist and how difficult it is. And yeah, so at the time I was in a job that I was miserable with, and wasn't enjoying that. And I have a pretty, extensive history with mental health personally and my extended family. So it was like a perfect thing for me to tackle. And, I've seen therapists before. I see a therapist right now. So yeah, that was in 2018 and 2019. I launched the businessfirstsession.com, and now we're here in 2022, still at it.
No, it's unreal, Rob. You mentioned like finding the right therapist for your wife. At the time it was difficult for you. You talked to a therapist, like, and then obviously with First Session, you're interviewing and you're bringing therapists on board. Like what's the process finding the right therapist? Like how would you define that? Because I feel like it's catered to each person, right? So like, how do you best kind of describe, and how do you bring that out of the therapist in order to make those connections with the people that want to go into therapy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So just for some context, yeah, our website's almost structured more like a dating website than a clinical medical website. Like it's every therapist has a introduction video that our company shoots professionally and edits, so that you can essentially, as someone who's seeking therapy, go through and look at different therapists, and mostly just watch videos, and like, watch 30 seconds. If you don't like what you see, watch the next video. um, and the videos are, I think, the closest. I mean, unless we get into some like VR stuff one day, but I think the videos are the best way to allow the therapy seeker to. It's really hard to describe. Like you basically need to feel like a subjective, pull towards that person, right? So what we do is we just try to like interview the therapist in as vulnerable setting and like real setting. Like we don't allow them to really prepare for the interviews. We don't let them bring in notes. Like we don't want them to have scripted answers. Like we want to get to know them as people. So we try to like really just adapt each interview to each therapist. So we ask like some blanket statements, but we really want to like get them to loosen up and to show them true selves, which can be challenging on video because most of them are not, movie stars. Um, but I think it gives people the opportunity to see like, this is a real human. Do I connect with their energy or not? And it's it's a it's a bigger investment than a lot of the other therapy websites kind of make. It's but part of the reason it's so hard to find a therapist is because you're on these directories and you're looking at hundreds of pages that might not be up to date, and like most of them just are like a selfie profile pic that the therapist uploaded, and they write a description themselves, and it says like verified by whatever company, but it's really just them writing and maybe uploading their license number. But a lot of it says like, I'm a client-centered therapist. I take an eclectic approach, like, because they're not like trained to connect on like the non-therapist level. They spend many years in school, and most of them bring, I shouldn't say most of them, a lot of therapists are tempted to bring like the academia language into their work. And like people like us, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's almost like more of a turn off than, so we're trying to just connect with them like ordinary people, and, gave it a short video so people can just feel that subjective, like, okay, like this person sounds interesting. I feel like I could open up to this person. I think I could, respect this person. They seem warm, or they seem more direct. And I like that energy, or they seem really gentle. Like those are the types of things we're trying to bring out. And of course we have their, experience and like focus areas listed. But just to say one more thing, recently I've been really thinking about like I think people who have like either not done therapy before, or just a lot of the websites and apps and like the clinical methods are very focused on like what kind of modality a therapist uses. Like, do they use CBT, or do they use something else, right? Or do they, are they specialized in anxiety, or do they work with athletes? Or what I've kind of learned after like all these number of years and making all these connections, I've talked to like over 1,000 therapists, and I've done a lot of my own therapy, and I've read a lot of books. I'm not a therapist, but a lot of people get tripped up on these like specializations. Like they go in and they're like, oh, I have like an issue with sleep. Like I'm anxious. Maybe I drink more than I want to. So like I need to find a therapist who is an expert in all those things. And they think that like that is the biggest, it's like, you don't have experience with substance abuse. Then I can't work with you. But ultimately, like the connection with the therapist is the most important. Like it's proven to be the most important thing by research in terms of the success in therapy. And it's also like a lot of these challenges that people face come back to like, how are you treating yourself as a person? What are the past experiences? How are they showing up in your life? So it's more about like that connection. Can you work on those things? And a lot of the root causes for these different kind of like specialty areas from a therapist's perspective are from like a similar place.
That's really interesting. Hey, Ty, that's like exactly what Eric said too. We had our previous guest, the episode hasn't been released yet, but he does like it's called Same Here Global. It's like a mental health and like movement. We share a lot of his stuff because he's got a really good perspective, but like he talks about just like how it's all of like your life's experiences and traumas, if you had them, or all these different things that kind of create who you are, and that comes out. And say you have some mental health issues. So like, it's interesting you say that about like unraveling, kind of getting deeper and finding like those things that you need to talk about, rather than just treating like the substance abuse or the anxiety, whatever. Like it's just like athletics too, right? Like I have a knee problem. Well, that knee problem could be stemming from a hip issue that I haven't taken care of, and now it's coming out as a knee issue or whatever, like it's about finding like the root cause. So I think that's interesting. It's a powerful way to put it. So good for you.
Yeah. I think just to add to that too, like not that you can't make progress if you just work on the thing, like on the surface, like I have a friend who I don't think ever done therapy before, recently started, wants to cut back on their drinking. Found a therapist that has, some experience with that. And I don't think they're diving into his past necessarily, but they're starting in a very like tangible way. He's recommended some books. It's almost like an accountability coach as well, where it's like you have someone in your corner keeping you accountable, which is like, in athletics, it's similar to a personal trainer. Like half of it is them watching you in the gym, making sure you're doing it. Yeah. And, and that's hugely valuable too. So there's like many different levels of, work that you can do in therapy.
And for me, like kind of back to the not the start of it all, but you mentioned 2018. And I think, COVID for a lot of people, obviously was a very tough situation. But it's interesting because I think two of our recent guests, Chris Johnson and Ray Ferraro, it's hard because you don't want to highlight the fact that COVID, could have been a very beneficial thing for you personally, because obviously so many people went through very traumatic situations. But I wanted to touch on the fact that, did you find that obviously COVID was a huge benefit for First Session as a whole, just because like you said, I mean, before COVID, I don't think a lot of therapy was predominantly online. I mean, all of my sessions that I did before COVID were, strictly in person. I enjoyed being in person, but obviously I had to make this shift afterwards. But for you guys, I mean, having this online platform that is able to make these connections, I don't want to, assume anything, but was COVID kind of a situation where it's like, okay, like now people are probably more actively looking for a therapist and from the comfort of their home,
Yeah, it's a great observation. There's no question that it was beneficial for a first session, especially in the fact that people became accustomed to like this kind of communication over online video, and Zoom, and that's the biggest shift. I mean, when I started for a session in 2018, I started interviewing therapists. I started by looking at like a 5 mile radius around where I lived because I didn't want to travel very far to meet these therapists. And I lived in a big city, so there was a lot of options. And once COVID hit, I remember I think only 20% of the therapists I worked with offered online sessions, and like I never saw anyone really book online sessions. And then like after COVID, like in like March 2020, like when everyone was really, really scared, actually it was a big slowdown. What happened is everyone, like, I think just stopped, and like people stopped going to their therapists, even if their therapist could, see you online. And then it was like 2 months later, we saw things really start to heat up because I think it took, like, everyone was just in shock. I think people like cut everything out of their lives, including their therapist a lot of the time. But then we saw some, a lot of people kind of trying it out online. And the therapist that I worked with, I mentioned 20% only offered online. Within like 10 days, 100% offered online. And because of the tools that exist and so easy, right? And there's a lot of free online platforms that you can use that are like privacy compliant, and then like Zoom became more compliant with the rules. So, and yeah, it's hard to comment on people's stress levels and trauma during COVID, because everyone's experience has been different. But there's no doubt that a lot of people had to just sit with themselves a lot more, and you can't have as many distractions and your life just stops. So you're kind of having to sit with your own self and understand if that's working for you. So I think it definitely brought a lot of people to self reflection, which definitely brought more people to therapy. And then on the other hand, sorry to drag this on, but there's been just this massive investment in like the venture capital world from like these therapy companies, right? So a lot of the like kind of name brand companies that are coming from the US, like BetterHelp, and like sponsoring every single podcast that you listen to, and Talkspace, and with Michael Phelps, and so these companies, there's just been millions and millions of dollars poured into these companies that are advertising on all the social media platforms. So there's been a huge investment in awareness of therapy at the same time. So I think that people have been seeing this, and whether or not they're using those apps or they're coming to places like First Session, they're being encouraged, and people are talking about it more thanks to, people like you too. So respect.
I feel like that's what makes, like, just what you do with like the importance of getting to know your therapist through video and through like candid questions too. Like, it's already hard. It's hard going in to see someone like face to face, but when you're face to face, the connection, I feel like, is a little like easier to make, where you are actually like physically with the person. So when you can have that ability to try to get to know the person through content or through video, whatever it is, then that can kind of break some walls down and make the online part of it easier, right? But I got a question. This one's kind of just a little lighter. I was going through your team on the First Session site, and I saw Miguel as the uncertified therapy dog, and I was kind of just wanted a little breakdown of his role and kind of how he performs. Give me a little bit of the lowdown on that.
Yeah, Miguel's our dog, and he's originally from Mexico. He came into Canada
Nice.
in 2019 as a little pup, and he's a mutt. And he's just been a champ, just keeping the team morale high. At least the founder's morale. Not many of the team have met him because it's a remote team, but at least in our household, he keeps things lighter. Keeps the emotions released. He's very huggable.
How's he with the baby?
Oh, great! Yeah, he's so good. He gets a little bit jealous, but I think he's gained a few lbs from the extra meal times. But
Yeah.
he's really gentle.
Okay, my mind's more spinning in the direction of like first time users.
Yeah.
And obviously I love the name, first session. I think it just kind of breaks down the fact that first session, that first step is always the most vital step in that journey. Essentially, obviously it's, after that first session as well, and so on and so forth. But I think coming to that first step is such a monumental piece in being able to, take ownership of the fact that you are self-aware enough to know that you need this. And we're seeing it more and more, especially through COVID, that, more companies are having insurance plans that, offer this. And I think there's more of an accessibility, which is good. Obviously, there's still a long ways to go. Literally in every one of my speeches, I'm like, I wish for a world where everybody in the world had access to therapy. Maybe one day we'll get there, but for now, obviously, we're getting there and we're starting to get there. But my question is, what is your main message to these new users that come to your platform that, hear about you through a friend or whatever whatever the avenue is that they come about, first session? What is that main first message or that first connection of, you're here and this is a big important step, but now, we want to help guide you along this journey as well? Is there something that you really try to amplify with your users?
Yeah, great question. I believe we try to communicate the main message through the design of the website in particular. Like, sure, there's, articles you can read about how to find a therapist, but just the way that we've thought about designing the experience of finding a therapist is like a human first approach, like a very connection focused approach. And that's what we want people to feel when they are looking for someone to work with, is like, I'm finding another human to talk to, not I need to go find CBT. And like, so that's the main thing, is like, trust your intuition based on the options that are available. And then we just try to remove all friction to get in their way. So there should be no hesitation around, is this therapist accepting clients right now, or are they not? What's their price? If I have insurance, like, am I covered? Like, we try to remove all those questions because those are just roadblocks that are, as you mentioned, it's hard enough to get to that step. So when they are ready to explore this, we want there to be minimal friction and distractions and, maximum, connection seeking rather.
Rob, for you, like you obviously you start this, like you said, you left your previous jobs. You said you had like software companies and you wanted to kind of start your own thing. Like, talking about like stress and from a psychological standpoint, like starting your own company and going out on a whim where you maybe weren't totally sure how this whole thing was going to pan out and how you're going to navigate through. Like, I think a lot of people get caught in the crossroad of like doing a job and just fitting in and kind of going, being safe, being comfortable, maybe not enjoying things fully. Like, what was your headspace? Like, where was your head when you were doing all this? Like, how did you kind of have the confidence and starting this? And I don't want to say like sell the farm and jump into something. Obviously, you're a smart dude and you kind of know how to do this. But like, what was that process like? Because it's got to be stressful. As exciting as it is, it's got to be a little stressful, no?
Yeah, great question. Well, the initial push, I've been thinking about trying to do something entrepreneurial since I, was in high school probably. And I got fired in 2018 from my job. And that was what was required to actually push me to do this. And honestly, it was like a blessing because it is hard, as you mentioned. Like it's so hard to stop something and start something, on the side while you have income. Like a lot of the like famous investors and entrepreneurs say like a salary is like a addictive drug, like but it's safety, right? So yeah, like I got let go, and I was actually getting like a bit of the employment insurance, which we have in Canada, if you get fired. And so that was like a little bit of cushion to try it, and it was very. I chose this in a way where, like, luckily there's the tools that exist to build a website, and like I just bought a camera and like got Final Cut Pro on editing software, and like was shooting the videos, and it wasn't expensive to start, but it was my time, which so I was able to dive right in. But I would just say that yeah, it is very hard, and I think there's a lot of like advice out there that says you got to start with the side hustle, and like you should be working on the weekends, you're working on the evenings, and like that's super hard. And I was very fortunate to be able to go all in at once. But it's been difficult. I think it's a competitive like landscape out there, and on the internet for anything that you try to do. And it's a huge market. And I think that when you have now I have a family, so it's like the pressure's now a little bit on to provide more. But yeah, no, it's totally worth it. And I think it's really important to find community. And that's kind of what I've been working on recently, is like trying to find, other folks that are running businesses, or, because I have a small remote team. And so I'm definitely thrive off of like, human connection. And it's sometimes a bit isolating for sure, especially in the internet world. So yeah, connecting with like-minded people is super important on a consistent basis.
Okay, so I got one question kind of applicable to this topic. From the beginning of first session to when you first started to now, you take one thing from this experience so far that you kind of learned about yourself. Is there anything that sticks out that's kind of either it's been brought out of you because of the progression of first session, or something that you've learned you've had to acquire? Like, what do you got? Is there anything that comes to your mind?
Good question, Riles.
Thanks,
Dad.
Dad.
These are good questions. And hey, this is a recent discovery. So yeah, I'm about 4 years in. And my own counselor actually, she's sort of like a coach counselor combination, but she's a licensed therapist. And she recommended a couple months ago that I get assessed for ADHD. And I did, and I do have it. So I'm 32 years old now, but basically what that shed light on was I'm more of like they call it inattentive type. So distracted really easily, and hard to stay on one topic for a long time. And so like when you're in a job, or when I was in school, like there was a lot of structure that I could lean on. Like there were people depending on me. There was exam dates and grades that you needed to get. And then when you're in a job, I was in a sales focused role, so I had targets every month, and I could hit those. So it was a lot easier, I guess, for me to kind of focus on that. And now it's like every day, there's amazing freedom to being an entrepreneur, but there's also a scary amount of freedom for like someone who can get distracted easily. And I've seen stats thrown around that a lot of entrepreneurs have like ADHD. And I've learned a lot about it recently, but I think a lot of people try to use it as their superpower. So for me, it's like, how can I,
I was literally just thinking, hey, I got to interrupt you for 1 second, because in my head, somebody told me like, I mean, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I do have like, I'm very like hypersensitive. I need to like be doing things all the time. And the guy told me, he's like, use this as your superpower. And I was literally just thinking that when you said how like a lot of entrepreneurs, they use it as their superpower. Sorry, keep going. That just blew my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's you have to, right? I mean, so yeah. I mean, I think you just it's tough. I mean, and that's kind of, as a solo founder, like I don't have necessarily like a partner who I can kind of call every day and be like, all right, like what's the plan for today? Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? I'm just like, all right, like, has the dog been walked yet? Or like, okay. So it's more of like really, allowed me to really work on myself, which actually translates to more, output at work. So like exercise, super important, community, super important. Like, I want to be a good family man. So it's like really the investing in my own mental health and health in general is going to translate to more effective output for the company and for the team. But yeah, as far as the diagnosis is concerned, I think it's years ago I might have been more shook by the diagnosis, but I think from everything I've learned and reading, and it's just a tool, right? It's just like like all it is like you check a bunch of bullet points in a manual, and now you can be diagnosed. And I think that like my perspective is like mental health is just a giant spectrum, and it's really hard to place people in boxes. So I'm not like I'm not putting ADHD on my like bio and all my social media, but it's just like, okay, with people with ADHD, what are some lifestyle tools that you can do to be more effective? And for people who, have successfully, managed businesses or athletes, or, what do they do? And so it's just given me a really good opportunity to like learn how to focus and harness and use it as a superpower. Hopefully. I'm still working on that.
No, that's interesting. Sorry about my co-host just blatantly interrupting you there, but
I was literally thinking, I was like this. I remember like when you brought it up, I was like, use it as your superpower. And I was like, oh, that's like a really good way to think about it, because it can go opposite ways, right? Like it can go against you or it can help you. And if you can learn how it can help you, and if you can, even just little things, nutrition, and if you can take care of all those little pieces that you are hypersensitive about, then it can kind of work in your favor. So my brain would just, it blew right there. I was like mind blown. You said superpowers the same time superpowers went through my head. So, sorry.
One of the criteria for ADHD that they ask you about is the tendency to interrupt others and speak over others, and I definitely have that. I definitely have that.
Yes.
Dang.
Oh, that's funny. No, but that is interesting. Being able to like honestly harness that and use it to your advantage. And honestly being able to, I think it's so easy to get kind of in those ruts, especially when, structure is not a huge aspect of your life. And I think I'm kind of the same way. Like if I get in a rut, I just don't challenge myself. I'm just not putting myself out there more, and I'm not taking it all in. Like I'm kind of just going through the motions. But I want to go back to community. I think community, we've all learned over these past couple of years that community is so very important in not all aspects of life, but in predominantly, especially in the mental health space. A community within your support system that can help you along your healing and growth journey, whatever it may be. I think first session, obviously, it's interesting and it's unique in the sense where obviously these are all individuals that are coming to you on an online platform, not necessarily looking for a community, but just looking for somebody that's going to accept them and understand them and listen to them and recognize them. From your point of view now, you're changing lives and saving lives. It's tough to obviously completely, balance that sometimes when people are possibly coming to you and expressing the fact that this did save my life, or this therapist did save my life, or whatever it may be. I know what's happening, even if people aren't, reaching out to you, I can guarantee you it's happening. And I think that is a powerful thing. But like I said, it's hard in one sense to be able to balance that as well, just because you obviously don't want to get too invested in other people's journeys, because you know that you're still, you got to stay focused in on yours. So why has this continually been so important to you? Obviously the community aspect, but just now, like even the reviews that you've received through First Session on your website, highlighting how, user friendly and important this has been, and being able to find that connection. Just for you personally, being the founder and being an entrepreneur, what is the main thing that obviously keeps you going? But now, like, just the sole importance that, this is our thing, and I'm proud of First Session, and I want to keep doing this.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it's not, I've had to really almost seek that out, and make sure that I pay attention to that on a regular basis, because often I don't. And it's easy to get kind of it's easy to just kind of it all to kind of blend into just email notifications and little, oh, it's these are real people booking with, therapists for the first time. And, a lot of people don't share reviews, and we don't try to be nosy because we think that's another distraction for them. Right. It's so if they are able to choose a therapist on their own, that's the biggest success. But I think that, yeah, the thing that keeps me going is when people do decide to write a review. We do have an email that goes out to folks that's optional after their session that says, how was your experience with First Session? Would you tell your friends and family about it? How was your therapist? Why did you choose your therapist? It's all anonymous. If they want, they can share their email if they want to connect. So in every once in a while, I'll connect with, the users, the end users, and ask them about their experience, and, try to understand what worked for them with the product, what didn't. That is the best part. I think for me, it's every time you see a positive experience, it kind of lights a little fire. And for me, running the remote team too, so I have a Slack channel. Slack is an online communication tool that all these reviews kind of automatically come into, so the whole team can read them. The whole team can see when people are booking therapy appointments, when new therapists sign up. So that's been a big part. I didn't expect, but the secondary part of feeling a bit more of a community, and ultimately I run a marketplace style business, so I have two sides in the marketplace connecting with one another. And on one hand, I have people seeking therapy, but on the other hand, I have therapists. And I've learned more than I could ever imagine about the industry of psychotherapy and mental health professionals from their perspective. And I've learned a ton about that, and I've tried to really they ultimately are my customers, and they are paying my company to market them, and so really getting to know their needs. And I think I mentioned I was doing the counting. I've talked to over 1,000 on the phone at least, and I've interviewed about 150 for an hour sit down in-person interviews. So I've talked to a lot of therapists, and really trying to advocate for them, because on one hand, yeah, therapy, it would be incredible if it was more accessible, more subsidized, less expensive in general. But on the other hand, it's it takes a lot of training. It takes ongoing education. It takes supervision. It takes someone who can hold other people's pain and not let them get dragged down. So it's a fulfilling career, I believe, but it's really challenging. So it requires a lot, and I think they deserve to be compensated for that as well. So it's a fine balance, and I think that there's kind of there's advocates on both sides. So I think that therapists deserve a lot of credit, especially during COVID-19. And therapists are always asked to lower their rates. They're always asked to volunteer their time. Always. So they're always giving. And I think that it's important to kind of respect their position and how hard it was for them to get there and how expensive it was for them to get there with like usually at least a master's degree and their licensing fees and on their insurance and all that stuff like that. So what excites me about that is that they can be entrepreneurs. In Canada and the US, like private practice owners are entrepreneurs. So giving them more kind of freedom to do that is kind of a one piece that kind of fires me up as well, which is nice. Yeah.
I've never really thought about that actually. Like that's such a good point. Like I was actually going to ask a question about like the accessibility part because there's a lot of people who can't afford to get therapy that would really like to be using that, like using it as a tool. But I never really thought about like that is such a hard job and just the process of getting to where they are as a certified, whether it's psychologist, whatever it is, like that's incredible actually. So thanks for pointing that out. Like, I don't know if this is too nosy of a question, but like, where do you see first session in terms of the growth and like, do you have ideas for the future or is it something about just maintaining the same things and allowing people to come to you, or what's next for you guys as you sort of foresee the future?
Yeah, great question. So we are only in Canada right now, but we are kind of operating across the country. So I think naturally it'd be interesting to explore in the US or specific states. But mental health care is like kind of regulated by province or by state, if I understand correctly. I'm definitely more familiar in Canada. But the main thing that I'm trying to do is now that I've kind of hit a critical mass of, I think I work with like over 150 therapists, closer to 200 now, is with that kind of, roster of our partners is being able to appeal to like larger organizations to partner with. So to continue to increase like, for example, like the Department of National Defense, I've been speaking to a couple folks there that like, there's a lot of sort of trauma and PTSD involved, and there's a culture of like not getting help there. And same with like first responders, like there's a culture of not asking for help there. So now that we've built more momentum is, can we actually speak directly to organizations like this, or, just corporations in general, as you mentioned at the beginning of this, like people are boosting their mental health benefits and companies like that. And especially as we get bigger, and assuming that our business metrics and everything are in good shape, then being able to offer discounted rates, being able to offer more accessible options for different parts of the community, and at the very least act as a hub. Like if we're getting a lot of web traffic, but people are looking for cheaper options, like we want to be able to guide them there and be a good resource for them. So there definitely are options that exist that are lower cost. Unfortunately, there's often long wait lists. But I think it's just keep the impact increasing and ideally be the biggest platform in Canada at the very least, if not North America.
Do you find that a hard balance because you started this thing and this is like first session's yours and you obviously want to see it blossom, but it's also like a area that is, you have to be cognizant of people and like you're catering to other people's feelings and there's got to be quality there, which you do such a great job of. And I know the type of person you are, and I feel like you're very moral driven and ethical driven. Do you find it a hard balance to push the company to grow and to find success? And obviously financially you want to be sound and things like that, but also at the same time, the quality and the relationship standpoint is important too. So how is that balance for you?
Yeah, I think that question just kind of shook me a bit. Yeah, I think I've been a bit slow to sort of be okay with like essentially like making money, and so I can reinvest in the business. Like I think we've been a pretty affordable option for these therapists to partner with over the years. So I'm working on the business model right now, and I think it has been challenging because it's like an industry where everyone would be amazing if everyone had access, and as I mentioned, the therapists are always trying to be squeezed out by these big insurance companies, and employee assistance programs are paying them very low wages for the most part. So it's a fine balance between kind of like profit and impact, and like any business, like you can't keep everyone happy, and we've had to focus on quality over, like, it's just my nature to try to like there's cheaper ways for me to spin up a website and connect people with therapists, but I've really invested a lot into this connection piece and the videos and everything that goes along with the booking. Soon we'll have payments. So it's like, it's unfortunate sometimes, but we've focused on quality kind of versus quantity. And my hope is that by elevating the bar for the industry, I hope more people, focus on quality as well, even at like the lower costs. More people incorporate videos, more people incorporate direct booking. You funnel less people through like intakes that are unnecessary sometimes and just going to be redone by the industry. So really good question. I think I've really had to work on that a lot. And at the end of the day, though, it's, we're not a not-for-profit. I think, we could still be in the future if that would be beneficial for the impact. But for now, it's trying to find a balance between making it work and then reinvesting and continuing the impact. So it's been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, we respect the fact that obviously you want what's best for the company and for connection, and being able to continue to establish those connections between therapists and individuals. So I personally don't have anything else. Riles, I don't know if you had anything, but I think, as much as we can, help, I mean, any listener, please. I've personally tried to send a couple of my friends Rob's way just to make sure that, because most of my conversations that I have with my friends are a situation of, I want the right person. I want the person that will get me. I want somebody that, I can establish that relationship from the start. And I think obviously what you've created and what you guys have been able to utilize in that capacity is so commendable and so neat and so unique. And for anybody listening, if it's a personal journey, if it's somebody else who's going through some struggles right now, I think, what you guys have laid out with First Session is the website's user friendly. You said it how many times, the connection is the most important part. And I think that is what I hope will draw and continue to draw more and more individuals to First Session, because of the fact that, this is a weirdly unique journey to navigate sometimes when you are making that first step. And I think to make it as easy as possible while also holding, those people accountable in the same right is a hard balance to find, but it's important as well. So I think we just wanted to obviously thank you for coming on and sharing, a little bit about your own personal journey with, how you got into this and what First Session's kind of, hoping to do in the future. So we just have, a lot of love and respect for you, brother. And we will continue to, hopefully help change more and more lives in this crazy world we live in. So thank you, my man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the work that you're doing here and your busy schedules. And it's amazing to talk to guys like you about these topics and have you pushing the bar for everyone. So thank you for the work you're doing. It's amazing.